All right, today we're diving into a case that is genuinely one of the most disturbing you'll ever hear about. We're talking about the man they called the Toy Box Killer, David Parker Ray. And just a heads up, this is tough stuff. The details of his crimes are, well, they're pretty horrific. So let me ask you something. How do you escape a perfect prison? I'm not talking about a regular jail. I mean a place designed from the ground up by a sadist. It's soundproofed. It's filled with unimaginable instruments of torture. The whole thing is engineered for one purpose: absolute control. How on earth do you get out of a place like that? Well, on March 22nd, 1999, a woman named Cynthia Vigil did just that. She did the impossible. And you have to remember her name, because her unbelievable act of courage is the only reason we even know about any of this. And really, calling it miraculous escape almost doesn't do it justice. This wasn't just about her saving her own life. What she did that day, it blew the lid clean off a secret, decades-long reign of terror that was hidden in plain sight out in the New Mexico desert. So let's just walk through what happened. Picture this. Cynthia Vigil is chained up, with a collar around her neck, but her captors get careless. They leave a set of keys on the table. During a struggle, she somehow gets her hands on an ice pick, stabs Ray's accomplice, a woman named Cindy Hendy, and just runs. Naked, bleeding, she runs for her life to the nearest home she can find. I mean, can you even imagine that level of desperation and pure, raw courage? So the police show up, and Cynthia Vigil does something that is just mind-blowing. Instead of just getting as far away as possible, she leads them back to that house of horrors. And what they were about to find inside, well, horror film doesn't even begin to cover it. He had a name for it. He called it the Toy Box. And what was it? It was a 22-foot semi-trailer that he had painstakingly and methodically converted into his own personal soundproofed torture chamber, just parked right behind his home near Elephant Butte, New Mexico. And the stuff they found inside, it just shows you the level of premeditation here. We're talking whips, chains, pulleys, leg spreaders and clamps, surgical blades and saws. He had a gynecological chair in there, a homemade electrical generator for shock torture, and to top it all off, video cameras and a mirror on the ceiling so he could force his victims to watch what he was doing to them. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thing. This was a system, a meticulously crafted hell on earth. So, okay, how did this all work? How did he get away with it for so long? Because it wasn't just about the toy box itself. It was a whole process, a twisted method he had perfected over the years. It turns out he had a clear system. First, the abduction. He'd target women in bars, parking lots, or even while they were hitchhiking. And get this, he often had help from his girlfriend, Cindy Hendy, and sometimes even his own daughter, Jessie. Victims would then be held for months, 2-3 months at a time. And here's the really sick part of his plan. When he was done, he'd release them. But first, he'd drug them with powerful barbiturates to literally erase their memories. And if you can believe it, it gets even colder, even more calculated. When a new victim would first wake up inside the toy box, before anything else happened, Ray would play them a pre-recorded audio tape. It was basically an orientation to the nightmare they were about to live. And on that tape, in his own voice, he said this: "If I killed every bitch that we kidnapped, there'd be bodies strung all over the country. So I've devised a safe alternate method of disposal." That safe disposal method? It was the amnesia drugs. He'd release them, turning them into living ghosts who couldn't remember enough to ever testify against him. Cynthia Vigil's escape shattered that system. It brought everything crashing down. But as the case moved toward the courts, the path to getting full justice, well, it was about to hit a massive and final roadblock. So here's the overview. David Parker Ray, the Toy Box Killer. The crimes are kidnapping, sexual torture, rape. But look closely at that conviction. It was a guilty plea for kidnapping and torture. Notice what's missing. Not a single charge for murder. Even without a murder charge, for the crimes they could prove, the sentence was massive. 224 years in prison. Basically, the court made sure he was never, ever getting out. And what about the people who helped him? Well, they had very different outcomes. His girlfriend, Cindy Hendy, got 36 years. But his daughter, Glenda Jessie Ray, she cut a deal. She testified against her father and in return got full immunity. But here it is. Here's that roadblock. Just a little over a year into that 224-year sentence, on May 28, 2002,
David Parker Ray had a heart attack in prison and died. And just like that, he took almost all of his secrets to the grave with him.
And that's the biggest secret of all. Because see, he was convicted for kidnapping and torture. But what every single investigator on this case believes is that David Parker Ray wasn't just a kidnapper. He was one of the most prolific serial killers the country has ever seen.
So how many? What's the number they're working with? Investigators suspect Ray murdered as many as 60 women. 60. Just let that number sink in for a second. And yet not a single one was ever proven in court.
So you have to ask, why? If they suspect 60 murders, why couldn't they get a single conviction? Well, it really comes down to three huge problems. First, and most obvious, no bodies. They searched everywhere, but never definitively linked a body to him. Second, those amnesia drugs he used made it almost impossible for any potential survivors to give a full, coherent testimony. And finally, while they found piles of evidence, hundreds of pieces of women's clothing and jewelry, they couldn't connect those items to any specific missing people. The trail just went cold.
So all of this leaves us with these huge, haunting questions. First, just how many victims were there, really? 60 is the estimate, but the truth, we'll probably never know.
And the other big one, if he did murder all those women, where are the bodies? For more than 20 years, families have been waiting for an answer to that question. Which leads to this. With him gone, is there any chance we'll ever know the full truth? Or is this case just destined to be one giant, horrifying question mark forever? And that really leaves us with this final thought. He was caught. He was put in prison. But he died before the true scope of his crimes was ever brought to light. So what happened? What does justice even mean when a killer dies before it can be fully served?